You guys ready for the semester to be done with? Chill out. Any initial thoughts on Concordia so far, or college experience? So what you thought it would be? Better, worse than what you thought it would be? What you think? Better? The same. Anybody wish they went far away to school? Where do you wish you were?
The school that I had to go to down in Florida, that specialized in like marine and animal biology.
Yeah.
My mom did not like me to be like far away. The College of Michigan that I wanted to go to, Hope, and
Okay. Where in Florida was the school? You remember?
it was towards like southwest coast. I don't remember.
Okay. You ever been? Like out that way? Okay, it's real nice. Yes.
This is my farm.
Huh?
This is my farm.
Oh, okay, yeah, are you from
I'm from Florida.
Florida?
Yeah.
What part?
Southwest.
Like what, around what major city?
Major city? Sarasota.
Sarasota. Yeah.
Sarasota, Tampa.
I'm surprised you came all the way.
Yeah, I'm actually north of Fort Myers,
Yeah,
so we're in between.
that's an awesome location, except for after the
Yeah.
hurricane. I saw the videos of Fort Myers and it was like, you know, people's boats coming in and just crazy.
Yeah.
Sarasota, Clearwater, Naples.
Mhm.
Venice.
I'm from Englewood. I don't know if you know exactly.
Yeah, I
where
know
it
what
is.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
where I'm
awesome. I don't think I would be in Chicago, but
from.
yeah. I did a trip, a couple of years ago, I circumnavigated Florida. So I have a travel van too, like, you know, van life, right? Bed and all that stuff. So I'll like take cross-country trips. And I drove all the way from Chicago, did the Appalachian Mountains, hiked North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Then started the northeast side of Florida, circumnavigated all the way down to Key West, came all the way back up to Tampa, Clearwater, all that stuff. And that was awesome. So if you never had a chance like see like all of Florida, like you could do it probably maybe about a week and enjoy yourself, you know. But like Key West, Key Largo, I did the, you know, the fan boats in
In the Everglades?
hmm?
In the Everglades?
In the Everglades. Yeah, I was in the Everglades. Like I stopped off. There's a highway that goes through, and it's like really, there's no like gas station for like 200 miles. You're not filled up, you're screwed. But you could get off, pull over. Literally, like I saw a panther. I saw like snakes just random, just alligators just pulling up. So yeah, Florida is one of my favorites. The only thing Florida lacks, you know, in California do is the mountains. You know, they got way better beaches because Florida has way better beaches because the water is warm. California's water is cold. It looks beautiful, but the water, actual water in it is cold. Yeah, Florida. Who else? Who else wished they would have went somewhere else? Went away. Yeah. Chicago's great. Chicago's what you make it. You know what I mean? Like, I live in the Gold Coast, you know, like near downtown, and there's so many cool places to go check out. Like if you just don't look, there's so many free places, secret places, things you could just find walking around. But a lot of people I know personally don't take advantage of Chicago. Like they're just like, oh, I've never been here, I've been there. So get out and try to find some stuff. All right, group 3 is presenting today, but we're gonna try to wrap up some of psychological disorders. We may continue it going on to next week. When is our last class? It's last day of school. What's that?
16. This is the last day of June.
Okay. So we're getting there, we're close. 2 weeks away. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna continue on with PTSD, anxiety disorders, and see what else we could complete before group 3 presents. Anybody have any experience with someone with PTSD, or what is your experience? Yeah.
have like anxiety around it.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So it's anxiety around circumstances, events, things that have occurred. And kind of going back what we talked about, is going back to we talked about operant and classical conditioning. And we talked about with Pavlov's dog. We said really that bell that was ringing, that was really a neutral stimulus. The food was the actual thing that the dog wanted, desired, was to eat. But you can introduce something that can trigger a person later on, depending on an event or circumstance that was traumatic to them. Right? We'll talk a little bit more about an example of that. Let's see, we are. Let's see this question. Maybe we'll go about OCD. Anybody have a history with someone with OCD? Okay.
Well, family friend, their little sister had it.
Mhm.
It was really intense. Did a lot of things like, she had washed her hands so much to the point that like her hands, like multiple layers of skin had like come off. It was like an anxiety thing, that she had to wash her hands. There was like a lot of stuff like surrounding that when her anxiety got bad.
Yeah. So think of that. There could be a fixation on doing something. There could be a compulsion to do something, to maybe act. But also it could be just neurotic. You know, you could be, it doesn't require an act, a physical act. It just means maybe your thoughts may be compulsive, right? There's a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, directed by Martin Scorsese, and it's a biography of Howard Hughes. Anybody know who Howard Hughes is? Multiple billionaire. He's one who like invented TWA, was a big airline back in the day. He was a pilot, he was a movie producer, executive. He was a very eccentric guy. But later on, he always had sort of OCD compulsions or whatnot, a little bit of schizophrenia. But yeah, he had the cleaning hands. He had phobias like with germs and washing his hands and things like that. We'll talk a little bit too about that with comorbidity, how there's something else maybe adjacent to a disorder, right, that could be triggering or causing or having an effect on that specific thing too. Which could be, Howard Hughes' case was a phobia of germs, you know. So it's like, I gotta keep my hands clean, I'm afraid of germs, bacteria, I gotta wash my hands, I gotta wash them obsessively, right? So they're characterized by unwanted repetitive thoughts, so obsessions, right? So think of that. That's non-active, right, in a physical sense, which means you could just obsess over something, over a person, over a thing, over an event, right? That obsession can cause anxiety to a person. Actions, which we talked about, what are compulsions? Compulsions are actions, right? We mentioned washing the hands, you know, all the time, or someone who needs to maybe click a pen all the time, right? Do something or hear some sort of sound in the background, right? Someone who may need to chew gum all the time, it could be, right? We don't want to say it is, but these are things that could come from that. Or both, or they essentially interfere with everyday life, which is the main one. We always said disorders is like, hey, does it impact your life and does it impact other people's lives? That's typically what we want to get to the root to, which is always hard for an actual clinical diagnosis, right? Because we all think like, hey, I do this, Professor Ross, but I think I have a disorder, but you're like, well, you're not really impacting your life, right? It doesn't really bother you that much, or it may not bother other people. So that would be very hard to diagnose and treat. Obsessive thoughts are unwanted and seemingly unending, so they just come on. You're not very conscious about it, right? They're very subconscious. They just happen when they happen. You don't really have control of them. Compulsive behaviors are responses to those thoughts, right? You may have an action based on a thought that you have that you can't get out of your head, that you cannot control. And they're more common amongst you guys' age, right, which are teens and young adults. Why do we think that is? Why could we assume that is? Why could we assume that maybe your age group will have more repetitive thoughts, compulsory actions? Why do you think it is? And just think like, hey, I pick up my phone. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. And if I don't do it, I'm stressed out. So I need to do it to be okay. Yes. What you were gonna say something?
It's like overwhelming anxiety from like getting into social media or like having to have a routine. I have to have a routine at least feel like I'm somewhat in order.
Yeah.
But like, like you mentioned, like some people, like if they don't pick up their phone, it's like kind of just like a trigger for them, like I need to check social media, I need to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Think of it as like relatable to experience. You guys are being introduced to the real world, right? You haven't had much experience with it. Maybe you haven't had jobs for a long time to have an understanding of like managing money, right? Managing a family, understanding politics, right, for what it is. Understanding a lot of things that someone with more experience, just meaning an older person, may have experienced and gone through, right? They've gone through the thing. You guys have been introduced, which means there's a lot of stimulation. You're trying to figure out so much about your life. You're trying to figure out so much about the world. Like, I don't know what I want to do, you know, maybe I want to do that, and if you do try, you're like, well, okay, I learned I don't want to do that thing, right? Relationships, socialization, or someone older, if you observe older people that kind of like, they've done it, right? We may look at them and be like, they don't understand, you know, but they've lived a life, you know, they pretty much, they know what love is and experience, and know what, you know, a lot of things in life, which means they've gone through an experience. So you guys have the exposure to just so much going on in your brain. Remember we said the prefrontal cortex is still growing, it's still adapting, it's still malleable, right? So you guys are still trying to get to sort of the top of the hill, right? Where some people may have got to the top of the hill mentally, and now they're coming back down. They're like, all right, I've seen everything. I understand that learning too much might be a bad thing too. They're like, I learned everything I need to learn, I'm coming back down. But I don't want to stress myself out by overthinking too much things. That kind of goes to Maslow. Other OCD related disorders such as hoarding, right? Which I could maybe, may have some symptoms of, right? I collect things. I like to collect things, you know. Motorcycles and artwork and random little trinkets and novelties. You know, some people might see my stuff. I got like 3 storage units full of stuff, and they're like, come on, dude. Like, you really need all that stuff? You're a hoarder, basically. Body dysmorphic disorder, excoriation, trichotillomania, which we'll maybe come back to. PTSD, we'll talk about PTSD, characterized by haunting memories, nightmares, hypervigilance, avoidance of trauma-related stimuli, social withdrawal, jumpy anxiety, numbness of feeling, and/or insomnia. When you think of PTSD, out in society, who they normally generalize as having it? Yes. Yeah, veterans, right? Why is that? Why veterans? Why is that sort of the normal generalization when we think of PTSD?
So war is traumatic, like there's so many things that can happen in war that like will just stick in the back of your mind. Like people get like veterans get triggered by like fireworks because they saw my bombs, or
Yeah.
like a gunshot can trigger someone.
Yeah, I mean, think of this, if you are placed, it could be somewhat comparable to if you took a normal person off the street and you introduced them into a very, very violent prison system. Right? Let's say we took one of you guys, put you in San Quentin in California, right? Or we put you somewhere where it's like, it's really, really bad here, right? How you would go from this normal life behavior, stimulus around you, which is not too crazy, right? Being exposed to something to where you have to watch yourself constantly. You have to think, you have the environmental scan, who's doing what, why are they acting, for sure. Where you're exposed to type of crazy sounds and screams, you're exposed to violence, right? People maybe being stabbed, right? Or maybe people being raped. What that will do to alter your brain, right? From going from a normal plateau to this hyper stimulus of all these different factors. Now, when you come back, reintroduced to a normal civilization, it's gonna do something to you, right? Because your body's been shocked, right? Your mind has been shocked. You weren't trained or prepared for that sort of observance of experience, whether it happened to you or you just observed stuff happen to other people. And you do have to have a certain mindset, critical mindset. So if you're going to the military, you're being deployed, have you truly thought about what it's like to kill somebody? Like, did you really, or did somebody just sign up? The Army, Marines, Air Force, with a drone, or something? Like, have that person process what it's like to take a life and not just take it, but have to live with that for the rest of their life, right? Or maybe observing your friends dying very close to you. All these different things. Now you're reintroduced to a normal life where you don't see guns and bombs and explosions and all these different things. Now you have to live with this stuff. Yeah, it's haunting memories, right? And it doesn't have to just be, we just use an example of veterans who've been deployed or even, fought in some sort of actual combat. That's related to everyday life for normal people. But I remember, what do you remember? I remember somebody doing this to me in a way that it made me feel. Now that I'm able to grasp and understand truly, right? Or maybe you're still trying to understand it, how to live with this for the rest of my life, like how to manage going through life with that sort of trauma. Right? So the post-traumatic, right? The event has occurred, now you have to live with it. You have to deal with it. You have to try to manage it. Right? So it can have social withdrawal. You be like, hey, I'm being judged, right? You can perceive that you're being judged by other people. You're like, I don't want to go around my family. I don't want to go around these people. Because either A, I feel that I feel a certain way about myself, right? Or B, I perceive that others may feel a certain way about me. They may feel like I'm abnormal, I'm unusual, my behavior, my thoughts, my actions, blah, blah, blah. Right? So social withdrawal. I have people in my family that do that, right? So people we haven't, very close, haven't talked to in quite some time, and it's difficult. People don't want to be bothered. If you reach out, they become maybe more aggressive or more vigilant or more withdrawn. Right? So it's a very tricky situation. Jumpy anxiety. If you do hear a sound, let's say it was a sound that triggered that trauma. Now, if you hear that sound later on, something similar of the sort, now that your mind's going to skip back to the memory, and now you're going to be jumpy. Like, what was that? Right? Hyper vigilant about sounds. You could be hypervigilant about words. You could be hypervigilant about a sentence, a phrase. Something could trigger. You could be hypervigilant about something you see. Like, I don't want to see that scroll happen. I don't want to watch that. Because I've seen that happen and it's traumatic. Numbness of feeling, right, which is that biological sensation, right? The parasympathetic nervous system, like, blood pressure, blood sugar levels, right? We become maybe desensitized, like I can't feel nothing. And or insomnia, right? You have issues sleeping or you can't really get decent sleep at all. Typically it lingers for 4 weeks or more, right? So if you want to diagnose, it has to be happening for at least a month or more after a traumatic experience. Obviously, diagnosis requires so much more criteria than DSM and these things. There's a lot of things. Greater risk for post-traumatic symptoms with higher distress. So other things can happen if this goes untreated for a very long time, right? So understanding anxiety disorders, right? Because these are all classified as anxiety disorders. It's distressful, right? It throws you out of whack. You know, it takes you out of homeostasis, that balance. You're just not in a balance. It can change mood, it can make you aggressive, it can make you depressed, right? Could cause mania, which we'll talk about a little bit, like with bipolar, things like that. You know, people always talk about maybe like a Kanye West or something like that. All right, so today we posit that conditioning, cognition, and biology are helpful in trying to understand this. Hey, it could be nature, right? You could have a predisposition genetically to be triggered by certain things, certain events, certain environments, certain things over others. Others may be more resilient to a certain thing, right? Because not all things affect everybody the same. This is how it goes, right? Or it could be conditioning. Conditioning is like, hey, I jump scared my 2-year-old brother when he saw like a toy rat. I jump scared. Ever since then, he is petrified of rats. You're like, well, the sound was fake. It didn't have anything to do with the rat. Number 2, the rat was fake. Doesn't matter, right? The memory of that child, now it could even be an adult or senior citizen, doesn't matter, that they still reference that act, that event, that circumstances surrounding that as a sound and rat. So now if they hear a sound, they may think about a rat and get anxiety, right? Or if they see the rat, see a real rat, or even maybe see a toy rat, they still get anxiety. They still get triggered, right? Because it's stuck there. It's stuck in the memory. And cognition, so which means conditioning, we were saying. That was, you were conditioned to that, right? So either it was an immediate event or a prolonged event. Maybe you were exposed to something over and over and over that was traumatizing, and now it really, really lingers on. Or you just had one simple event that just kind of stayed with you. So these are all helpful in kind of understanding like how this stuff comes about, right? Classical, stimulus generalization, reinforcement, all those conditioning factors we already learned, right? Thoughts and memories, or certain thoughts placed into your head by others, right? Are you aware of those thoughts? Memories, interpretations, and expectations. How do you interpret it, anything? How do you interpret that memory? Right? Someone in the same family be like, hey, I remember that. You're like, well, why doesn't it bother you? Right? And I interpret it differently. I see it a little bit different. Right? So to a particular thing, one can have resilience to. I grew up, large family, youngest of 11. We were exposed to a lot of stuff. I went to 13 elementary schools. Lived countless amount of places, right? Bad places, some of the worst neighborhoods you can think of. And not everybody sees it the same way. Some people look at it very, very negative. Some other people back in our family will be like, oh man, it was a learning, that was awesome. It's a learning experience. I do remember us being happy and fun, right? The less you have, the more you kind of are bonded together. As opposed to everybody having so much, and now you don't even really talk to each other. So everybody sees it differently. So some people still have trauma based on that from my own family, and some people feel like, oh, that kind of built me into who I am. Some people may see it in a more positive light. Right? So we all interpret these things differently, and our expectations are different too. Time is it?
8:28.
All right, we'll wrap up. So Jing's experience, right? Let's get that. The brain is changed by experiences, right? new synapses, new connections, opening of new pathways. Traumatic fear learning experiences can leave tracks in the brain and create fear tracks, which we talk about phobia. What's a phobia? Anybody know what a phobia is? What kind of a fear?
Extreme irrational fear.
Yeah. Right. It's an irrational fear. You're like, oh man, I'm claustrophobic. You put me in the closet and close the door, I'm gonna freak out. Like, why? Still can breathe. Right? I'm afraid of planes. I'm afraid the plane will crash. Each and every one I get on will crash. Why? I mean, the statistics show you're probably most likely to get in a car accident. Right, so the phobia is really a fear of irrational things, right? Phobia against people, ethnic groups, and, sexual orientations, and all these different things, right? They're irrational. They're based off something in your head that you have made, created this world of your own, and how you perceive and interpret it. And we say interpretations and perceptions are always different, goes from person to person. Brain area overarousal involves impulse control and habitual behaviors, especially in the anterior cingulate cortex, right? So we have overarousal that involves impulse control, which means that arouse too much and control yourself, right? Arouse too much and control sexual behavior, eating, making control eating behaviors, right? All these different things. Natural selection shapes some behaviors that can interfere with daily life and taken to extreme, right? So nature is constantly programming the human species, but we are also programming ourselves by creating different societies, civilizations, rules, norms, acceptable things, right? We can maybe kind of relate to like exposure to artificial intelligence or something like that, right? You may be like, well, nature's programming us to do a certain thing, we've introduced this thing. At some point, who knows where that's gonna collide and be very, very harmful to the average human being. All right, I'm gonna linger on this. I'm gonna let group 3 present and continue on. So group 3, you wanna come up? Yeah.
Did you see the Kanye posted?
Yeah, he posted like a swastika on top of the Star of David or something, right? Yeah. Going back to mania, right? Someone said, hey, manic depressive, right? Mania, what's mania? Anybody know what mania is? Right? So mania could be like hypervigilance again. This excitation of something in your brain, right? Negative or positive. Excitation doesn't mean like, oh, so you could feel overly aggressive. You're excited aggressively. Kanye and maybe a certain interview with somebody, right? You don't have the answers, Sway. You know, something like that. But you could become overly impulsive and aggressive, or become overly pretentious of happiness. Isn't this exciting? Oh my gosh, isn't this the greatest ever? You do that everywhere. Right now, this is okay. Right? Isn't this the greatest class ever? You're like, oh, it's okay, Professor Ross. Not that serious. Right? So that would be mania, bouts of something that could be either negative or positive. Typically it's negative, right? Because you're sort of creating something in your mind that may not be the object of reality to most, right? So you would think maybe if Kanye West trying to project things in his mind onto others, and all we could do is say, hey, we got people that reinforce that behavior by accepting the person no matter what they do, which means we make excuses for people no matter what. Why? Because we like them. You get a pass. You can kill people. We still love you. Why? Because I like you. Now the other person do it, no. Lock them up forever. Go away from me. They're scum. So we always got to be very, very aware too of our own biases towards people, right? Whether we like them, they're artists, they're family member, they're blah, blah, blah. You know, we all have these innate biases. But yes, you know, so talking about Kanye West, who deals with, I believe, not sure, but maybe bipolar disorder, right? Where she deals with that manic episodes, right? Where you're just saying very, very irrational things, but you're still trying to make them rational, right? And then people may accept it, like, oh, it's genius. Like, well, what they look at is probably hurtful to a lot of people, right? Which means that, you know, you can't just say stuff, not expect it to hurt people, not expect it to hurt most people, right? Just because you see it one way, other people may interpret it a different way. So communication, how you interpret things is very, very important. If not, people will get triggered, they will get angry, and it'll be very hurtful. All right, I'll let group 3 come up and do their thing.
Presentation.
Oh, you want me to pull it up?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, yeah, we'll need that. If not, that's okay.
You emailed it to me?
Yeah, I think, one of my, classmates did.
Social dynamics of high school?
Yeah.
You just need to see it. I'll start out, no worries. What do you use?
All right. This is going slow. You could use it. It's just going slow.
Yeah, I think it's just the like, they kinda go, like, before. Figure things out. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gabriel, and these are my classmates.
Hi, my name is Maya. I'm Stormy.
So we'll be presenting our psychology insights into the social dynamics of high school. Oh yeah, it's a press a little button and it goes like in slow motion, right? So you guys know about high school, you guys all were in high school, you guys enjoyed high school? No? If not, then that's okay. Well, everybody knows about this kind of stereotypical social hierarchy that there is in high school, you know? And so you have like kind of like the popular girls, you know, you have like this type of, you know, all the stereotypes that American movies often give to you. And so you have people like Regina George at the very top, and then what's the girl's name? Katie, right? I forget names, but other than that, is kind of like a hierarchy for everything. And so we talk about social identity, you know, in this terms of in high school, you know, you're trying to find who you are, you know, who you become. So a lot of you guys are athletes, so you guys, you know, decided to become athletes, and that might change in the future. So you guys may, you know, be able to be artists. I don't know, you know, you never know. So the social identity is mostly, you know, it's just kind of giving you like a sense of who you are as a person, you know, in society. And so since the very beginning, you're like taught to learn social norms. And so basically they're kind of like rules or standards like society gives you, right? Oh wow, I didn't know that did that. Interesting. Interesting. And anyways, and so we can go to agents of socialization, and that's like your family, you know. Another examples are your neighbors, your peer groups, and that kind of thing is just your agents, you know, whoever is like giving you a lot of experience that we talked about with Professor Ross. It provides socializations, and then we come into reference groups, right? So what reference groups are is that whenever you see like a group in high school, you see that kid that is like, for example, let's say you see Regina George in your high school, imagine. Imagine you see like someone like that, right? You will be trying to be like them and be, you know, more, you know, they're gonna start be like them. You're gonna wear the same shoes. You're gonna wear the same things that they do, like Katie started to do in the movie, you know. And that's you know.
Fitting into social dynamics. For example, members from our current generation of high school students begin to mock one another to fit in society of our generation. We're also in different groups, such as they said, athletics, scholars, it's another word for nerds, but scholars seems not better, popular, etc. It's wired in our minds to want to be a part of any social class. Bullying, for example. Bullying has played such a big role in high school. It's a learned aspect from one another to begin to degrade others, whether it's to be for jokes or jealousy. Doing this starts a trend into doing it to kids often, as it's a must-see, must-do situation. Kids in high school begin to have an understanding of conformity, which is a point of pressure to fit into the crowd around them.
It just takes a little bit, but that's okay.
So, as I said, we like to fit into groups, and within the groups there are dynamics. So, the group dynamic is the study of behavior, changes, and processes within and between groups. We can categorize them in two different ways, like primary groups, which would be your smaller, more intimate connections, so like your friends, your teammates, and then your non-primary groups, which are like larger, formal structure, and that's mostly your classmates.
Ooh. Oh my god. Sorry.
So there are stages of the development of the dynamic, and the first one is forming. This is when the group members are selected and you kind of just figure out who you want to be in your group. The next comes storming. The members discuss their ideas to form a plan and the roles that they want to play in the group. Norming. The members agree on the best way to achieve their goal and they proceed with the plan. They perform. This is when the group is working at its best. The roles have been established and the members become self-reliant while working, so they're all kind of split up but come back together to achieve their big goal. And then adjourning, they celebrate the accomplishment of their individual goal and they realize that they could not have done it without the other members. And then there are also elements of the group that play a big role. So interaction, how the members engage with each other. This can be positive or negative. Goals is probably one of the most important elements because without a goal, there's no need for a group. Interdependence. Group members depend on each other to achieve not only a collective goal, but their individual goal as well. Like, a good example of this would be our presentation, because we each have to pull our own weight, but it all comes together for one thing. Structure. Organization of the roles, norms, and relationships. Somebody's gotta step up and like assign the roles and just make sure everything flows. And that goes into cohesiveness, how strong the bond is between the group and how well they work together.
By the way, this is the first time that we're presenting, so it's just like.
Conformity. So as I was speaking about the other slides, conformity is complying with social pressures such as fitting into social dynamics of what high school peers accept as public view. So it's just trying to fit in with one another, so when everyone has a social group that you all fit in, so it's just whether you comply with them or not.
And so we picked on some ash, I would say, to have this example of the experiment that he did in people, and basically it's conformities. People agree to the majority instead of the minority. And we mind if we play the video?
Mhm.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of length of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, a fifth person with a white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments. Two, 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 three, 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 three. But on the third trial, something happens. Two, 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 two. The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence. Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons. One. They must be right. Therefore, then, what if we... One. This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct. One. One, two, one, two, two, two. Two. In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response. Two. 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 In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Asch gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the third position, who also gives the correct response. One. One. Two. One. Two. With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say.
Let it finish?
Yeah. That's okay. Again, it's just a point of like, we're gonna follow into thinking that, a lot of the people that are reference groups, a lot of people that are in high school, we're gonna follow them. We're gonna follow the majority, but not the minority, and then in certain cases that changes, but other than that, we're gonna keep doing trends like TikTok and TikTok dances, so. Yeah. Wow. So this is our works cited, and I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation, and have a good day.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, questions?
Any questions or comments? Come on, somebody got something about high school. All right, what are the major, from, your research or understanding or your experience, what are the major goals in the social dynamics of high school? Right, all these social groups convening, criticizing people, what's the major goal or goals in high school? Of these groups, what's their goal? Their goals of behavior, why they behaving, why do people bully, like why do people get in bullying groups? Why do people get with the so-called cool kids?
Yeah, so basically everything is like we said in the, I think at the beginning of class of the semester. It was mostly because when we're essentially animals, right? So we wanna fight for power, and so whenever you have someone bully another kid, they essentially want a social hierarchy of being empowered above the other kids. So most of this drives, like that chain that we have internally. Again, we're just animals, so it's natural, but again, we just have to control that like any other thing. But
I agree, absolutely. Think of that, dominance and power, that's what, thank you guys.
yeah, I like that you guys like the mind too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I have very bad humor.
That's Pavlov's too. All right, I think we'll wrap it up. But, yeah, high school, right? Everybody was in some group, and everybody could be, think of this, it transfers into adult life. That's not unique, right? Now in adult life, who has more money will have more power, right? Who has more people to support them can bully you into believing something you don't believe, right? If all 30 people in this class had an opinion about something one way and one person like, no, I disagree, we would come down on that person, maybe like, well, you're really bad. Maybe I don't disagree, right? This is what happens out in real life with politics, with families. People are trying to get dominance every day, all walks of life. You go outside, everybody's trying to exert some sort of power, control over you by some means. The point is, whether you allow them to do it by saying, oh, they're wealthy, they're powerful, they're a celebrity, they're this or that, they're this, they have a hierarchy or, whatever. That's up to you. So remember, this class is mostly about getting power to yourself, to destroy any other factors outside so that you could live the greatest potential quality of life. All right, I'll end off